I think it's probably the amount of organisations that I work with every day. I'm not just working for one broadcaster, I work for mostly 70 public service broadcasters, and that comes with its own challenges. Different countries, different geopolitical considerations, but also different types of content. A lot of people are working on more news relevant content, things from Gaza, maybe things from Ukraine, but then there's another people behind that then who are looking at content that might not necessarily be as part of the news agenda, might be lighter type content. So it's a good mix, but it's the volume of broadcasters with the volume of social media content that we see is the main challenge. Yeah, I think the EBU and its members parted ways with the Russian members nearly over 2 years ago now, since the invasion of Ukraine happened. We also had an issue with our Belarusian member, and we're still very focused on the idea of protecting press freedom and making sure that our public service broadcasters have the right to be able to report without the fear of repercussions, with the ability to be able to tell the stories in a factual way. That's a challenge for all public service broadcasters, I think, to be able to have that independence from external forces who maybe have an agenda that they want public service media to push. I think it's a challenge for not just public service media but also for commercial organisations. I think in terms of the narratives that people are seeing, a lot of the big ones that we're seeing at the moment along is migration, is a huge topic. Has been so for the last decade, especially in Europe. We've seen a number of countries have very tough lines in terms of the content that they've been producing based on what they see happening. But we've also seen a lot of interference from far-right parties trying to push the conversation into a different sphere, into one that disrupts the public discourse. Most recently, I think we've seen, especially around the European elections coming up, we're seeing a lot of information around farmers. We've seen a lot of protests across many parts of Europe in the last number of months, in my own country, in Ireland as well. And a lot of this is feeding off misinformation that's coming, circulating online, which is drawing people into a conversation that they might not necessarily know the full facts behind. I think that we've seen it going back as far as 2013, when we saw the first entrance into Crimea, where the Russian internet agency was producing content that, should we say, furthered the interests of the Kremlin, and we've seen that continue as well across into other conflicts and into other spaces like the presidential elections in 2016 and 2020, and we've seen it again following the invasion of Ukraine, where content that we see is projecting one incident is being completely distorted and made to look like Ukrainian propaganda. To give you an example, there was a video which is quite famous now. It was known on Russian social media as the moving corpse. It was a video showing actually showing a protest in Austria, in Vienna, and it was an environmental protest where the people were lying under tarps and one person moved, but that was actually taken by the by Russian affiliated accounts, made to look like this was actually happening in Ukraine, with the narrative that Ukrainians were lying about the amount of people that were dying in the conflict. So this is the kind of thing that we're seeing. It's important when you are working on stories or looking at content like this that you understand first of all where it's coming from. We have a rule of 3 at the EBU, which is the idea of our verification process is very strict. We look at the source, the date and the location. We try and establish those to 100% with the idea of being able to understand, where this content is coming from, where it was shot and what date it was filmed upon. But the most important one actually for us is the source. Trying to understand not just if they're the copyright holder of the material, but if they are actually have an agenda, or they have, what is their motivation for sharing the content. So they are the kind of indicators that we look for, but they're not anything different from the normal journalistic work that we'd be doing.